Welcome to the Prof Talk Pod, brought to you by the Engaged Professor. Every 2 weeks, join us as we talk about tips and tricks to help you connect with your students, engage with industry, and stay up to date on all the teaching trends. We'll give you actionable strategies that will help improve your teaching today. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prof Talk Pod. My name is Becky Aiken, and today we have our very regular co-host, Katie Metz, with us again. I know I keep saying months ago that I'm going to change that intro. I really am going to do it. I think I overcommitted myself to committee work. So
We have a
maybe in
little
the
bit going
summer.
on. We have a little bit going on, right?
Just a little. I'm excited to have Katie on today because we're going to talk about something that is maybe something you don't often want to talk about or feel like you can't talk about, which is burnout as a teacher. And this is something that for me, I've had friends and family, tell me, boy, I wish I could have your life. It sounds so great. You get Christmas break off and you have spring break and you have summer break. And isn't it just great? And while those things can be great, although most of the faculty I know, a lot of the faculty I know teach during those times or work on a wide range of other projects that are a part of their job during those quote unquote breaks. There are also some drawbacks that we feel, and burnout is a real condition, a real thing that people experience across lots of lines of work and exercise and all kinds of things. And the World Health Organization actually defines burnout as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed and is characterized by feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativity or cynicism related to one's job. And this might be the most important if you are a manager or supervisor or in administration listening, reduced professional efficacy. So, not being as good as our job. And that's directly from the WHO website. And a lot of those things really resonate with me. I know Katie and I will kind of go back and forth, but one of the things that has been challenging for me, I think, as a teacher is I'm relatively like I like talking in front of people. Being in the classroom is energizing to me, but also at the same time, I feel like I have to be on, right? Like I have to be happy and energetic. And that is who I am. But there are days like we were just talking about challenges with storms that we've had in the Midwest recently. There are days when there's 50 other things happening, and I don't want to be excited or happy or energetic. And that can be exhausting. I don't know if you've experienced similar things, Katie.
Yeah, so one time this reminds me of one time, um, a student I was talking about, like, I don't know if I was complaining about an 8 a.m. class or just, like, 8 a.m. is a lot. I haven't taught 8 a.m. in a while, and back to the semester, this was a long time ago, and she was like, "Yeah, but, like, your job is easy, you don't have to, like, go to work and be at a queue, blah, blah, blah," and, 8 o'clock isn't that early, and I was surprised, first of all, that, like, she was a freshman, said that to me, and I was like, "Okay." But I said, "Yeah, but, like, the difference is at 8 in the morning on a corporate job," which I used to be in, totally get it, and there are a lot of downsides to it. I can go hide in my cube. I used to go get coffee with my friends first thing, mess around a little bit, check my email. At 8 in the morning when you're teaching, like, you are on. You do not have a choice. I think you and I both, had illnesses a lot this semester between ourselves and our kids. You don't have a choice. Yeah, and that's been sort of like the differentiator for me is like the flexibility is amazing, but we need to give ourselves a little bit of credit that when we're on, we are on. And there's not a lot of give in that area, right?
Well, and I think when we think about burnout, like the goal is to manage the signs and the feelings before you get to the place where you don't want to get up and go to work, where you're
Right.
canceling class because you're exhausted, or where you're starting to, let grading slip or not care about grading, right? Just be like,
Yeah.
whatever, everybody's gonna get a B and that's how I feel today. That's kind of the goal. And I don't think this is true for everyone, but certainly a lot of faculty and especially part-time lecturers and adjunct faculty, they're doing it because they want to, because they like it, because it's fun. And so you kind of got to manage all those feelings so you don't get to a point where it takes away and makes you kind of increase that mental distance. And so that's where, like, when you recognize the things that might burn us out, that always being on, or for me, I've seen an increase in students who are struggling mental health wise and
Mhm.
share that information with me. And maybe that's because they feel I'm a safe place, or maybe it's partially because I'm a woman teaching. I don't really know why, but that managing other people's emotions every day
Yes.
on top of your own family, like, you have
Mm.
children too, right? We're constantly
Yes.
managing our kids' emotions, can be a lot to think through and figure out how to do in a way that doesn't burn you out and make you frustrated.
Right, and I never understood until I had children, and I had a two-year-old. My youngest was 2, during the beginning of COVID, which that was a kind of a different thing, but I never I don't think I understood why people just, like, sit in their cars. Just, there is, Dustin Nickerson, who's a comedian I follow on Instagram, stitched a reel one time, and this, like, very young, cute influencer is like, "Where are the people in their 30s and 40s? What do people in their 30s and 40s do?" And Dustin goes, "Oh, they're in their car. They're sitting in their car. They're eating lunch in their car. They are, like, relaxing in their car, maybe taking a nap. They're just staring into space. We're in our cars." And I was like, "Yeah, that's actually, like." I just remember sitting in my car a lot when I was managing a lot of high emotions from a lot of people, especially, during COVID, and I will say I've taught, pretty so Dustin, you're right, we are in our cars. Um, but I managed I've taught a lot of different types of student calibers of students across the spectrum of, programs and levels. And I personally think, and I love this demographic, Becky, don't get me wrong, but freshmen and sophomores take on a pretty significant a chunk of that mental load. I experience with experience can say I think more than juniors and seniors if we're thinking about undergrad. And so, intro courses for those of you out there teaching them does not mean that what you're doing is easy. In fact, I thought my job was a lot harder when I felt more parental camp counselor, mentor, whatever, advisor, whatever I was in the day from the emotional side than with seniors who just like want to chat about life and maybe come to my tailgate occasionally, you know?
Right, especially if they're trying to figure out life in college and they're
Yeah.
dealing with all of these new things they haven't before, and so you're trying to help them manage that in the context of the academic side, but very little, in my experience, stays in one realm.
Yes.
Their lives
Yes.
intersect so much, and that is, I think, a really good example of that playing that parental role can lead to potentially burnout because it wasn't in your job description,
Right.
and so
Right.
you start to, like, maybe resent that a little bit, like, "This is not what I signed up for," type of attitude, and that's, like, a sign that you might be starting to need some kind of way to manage that burnout or that stress.
Well, and it's a trickle down effect too, right? We think that, oh, it stays in this academic role, but a lot of things bleed over. So with freshmen, a lot of times when I was teaching freshmen, the first time they get sick when they're away from home is a huge deal because they do not know what to do. Their parents are not around. Do they need more specialized care than our health center and so on? Um, Pressured for extracurricular activities, pledging fraternities or rushing sororities, team dynamics, all of that um, very much bleeds into itself. And then when you see them in the classroom, whether you want to or not, they're bringing that in. And you have to manage that dynamic. I would say, especially in smaller classrooms where there's a lot more interpersonal dynamic. It's a tough job.
Right, and
I
it
always say that my intro level colleagues have a way tougher job than me in many aspects for that reason.
and that's maybe that's part of the reason why, this topic came out of conversations we had gosh, it seems like it was not that long ago, but it's probably been
Yeah.
6 months ago because I started teaching freshmen and sophomores
Yeah,
again.
that's right.
And was noticing that management of their behavior and even how to, I just sent an email this morning that I had to sleep overnight to decide how to send it. So I'm up thinking about, like, what should my response be? What's supportive for the student but also holds the line? Like, those kinds of
Yes.
things can bleed into our time outside of our, which, let's be honest, we very few teachers have a 9 to 5, but let's pretend we do for a second. And
Outside of what
that
we consider our normal working hours, right?
yeah, I mean, I try to work during those hours, but I don't do all my work during those hours, if that
Yes.
makes sense. And so we're getting that extra outside of class too. So that's also leading to our own individual burnout because you sometimes can't shut off your brain. And one of the things, and this is, we'll go into some ways to like help you manage yourself when you start to notice signs of burnout. But a former colleague of mine told me they actually took their email off their phone
Yeah.
because students do homework at 12, 11, 2 a.m. and they would find themselves checking their email and feeling the pull to respond if they were still up at midnight, which we don't need to respond, right? Like we don't need to. It's going to be fine, but they felt the pull. And so that's one of those things where managing boundaries, I think, is a part of the conversation about how you avoid burnout. How do you make sure you don't get to the point where you are lacking motivation and starting to think like, maybe I should get out of this, or maybe this isn't the right fit for me?
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important point about our jobs, which is that they are not 8 to 5. And I don't want my job to be 8 to 5. I worked in corporate. And there were many aspects of corporate public accounting specifically that I absolutely loved. One of the things I did not love was this like pressure of window of time. Look, I'm not an afternoon person. I like early morning. I am the Energizer Bunny getting stuff done. I'm all over the place. And about 2 o'clock, I crash. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm better again, and that just didn't gel. The corporate, or if I was done with my work, I'm still sort of like sitting at the office, right? So that we keep talking about that, like that flexible until it's not. The other side to that is our students are not 8 to 5 either. I actually do not subscribe to the notion of not having my work email on my phone. It would stress me out not to have it just because I like and I think part of that is some of the administrative roles I have. There are urgent things or things I just want to knock out. Like that's an easy thing to respond to while I'm walking in to class. I'm sort of more of a knock it out person than wait. Because there are urgent things that students need that if we have the capacity to respond to, we can. But I definitely think on whatever side or whatever spectrum where you land on that, setting clear boundaries about expectation communications for your students and your colleagues is a really useful starting point to manage that, Becky.
Well, and I love that. So I'm like you. I can't imagine not having my work email on my phone. That would also stress me out. But I think that's an individual perspective that everybody needs to think about which way do you lean? You don't do it just because you feel like you have to have it on your phone. Are you more stressed with it or more stressed
Yeah.
without it? And I had another colleague, she works at Xavier University, her name is Ashley Stadler Blank. She has a little note at the end of her email that
Yep.
says, "I work up sometimes outside of regular business hours. Please do not feel like you need to respond to me outside of your normal working hours." Just
Yes.
giving people permission to do what they need to do when they need to do it and letting them know you recognize that you don't have to have an immediate response, I think sometimes makes us all
Yes.
okay to think about how to set those boundaries.
And I was just thinking about one of my colleagues who I work with administratively, who's in the School of Social Work. And anytime somebody in the School of Social Work says something or does something, I'm like, I'll bet that's the right way, right? It's social work. And I just pulled hers up. She says, please know that I am happy to receive your email whenever it is convenient for you to send it. But I will usually only be checking and responding between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. during the week. So she has almost that opposite approach, Becky, where she says, send it when you want, no disrespect, but I have these boundaries. I think I put, maybe not in my syllabus, but somewhere where it's like, if I don't respond within 48 business hours, you can email me again or something to that effect. Stop tapping me on the shoulder, but please feel free to reach out if I lose you.
Yeah, and I think that is when we think about managing our work so that we don't get to burn out, setting boundaries that work for you in the way that you like to work, and also still meet student needs. And if you have administrative roles, expectations, right? There is a
Yes.
balance there, right? You can't say, well, I don't like to answer emails until a week later. Like that's not going to work in most instances. Although my experience is lots of people never answer emails, but, that, you have to decide what that's like for you, and the sooner you do that, the sooner you can manage that source of burnout, of the feeling like you're always available, or you always have to answer, or you always have to be quick to meet everybody else's needs.
Yes, absolutely, and, you know, there are pieces to this where it can get ambiguous, right? So you don't want to be the person who's like, "Why isn't she responding? She always responds." But the other side is, uh, mental health comes with you have to do it. You can't let somebody else, be that way. My husband was in academia before I was, and I remember, like, going into the office on I'd get up in the morning on Fridays, and he's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to the office." Don't people work in the office?" He's like, "Katie, you're in academia now. Like, people stop going to the office." Basic stuff like that. Or like you don't have to respond just because your student sends an email. Yeah, like I feel like a lot of times I have to like be the one to tell other people now that I've been experiencing this, you have to be the one to set that boundary. If your students know you're going to respond right away,
Then
it's over.
they'll keep expecting it,
I
correct,
did
and
have a
it's
student over the summer though, in my course evaluations, by the way. Please, please. He said something to the effect of like, she didn't respond very fast, but I expected a response within an hour. So I guess that like during the regular school year, this wouldn't be a problem. And I was like, what? I think sometimes like those shorter term courses are the ones that are way harder to manage expectations on, right? Like,
Yeah, especially with communication like that, and I understand why, because in their perspective,
yeah,
they have a short timeline to get everything
yes.
done.
I get it from
Um,
both sides. I truly do.
yeah.
But don't write that down, man. Like, don't put that in my course evalu but it
Well
was like, she didn't respond, and his window of time to for me not responding was literally like an hour or 2, but it was summer. Yeah, it's my summer too.
and
Um,
I didn't even during, like, I don't know, unless I know that something major is going to happen. Like, I gave an exam yesterday. I woke up and the first thing, so I teach in Lawrence on Tuesday, Thursdays. So I get up, get my kids to school, get in the car, drive to Lawrence. I get to Lawrence 15 minutes before my first class starts.
yeah.
I don't usually check email, and then I teach from 9:30 to 10:45, walk to my next class, teach till 12:15. I don't
Mhm.
usually check email on Tuesday and Thursdays until 12:45 or 1 after the class is over and I get to a place where I can look at my computer. But
Right.
on exam day, I opened it before I left the house for 5 minutes. I opened it as soon as I got to my class. I looked at it in between classes because I knew I was likely to get some students who, I mean, illness in the time we're taping this, illness is just crazy, still. And so I knew I was gonna have some students that would be freaking out because they were gonna miss the exam. So that's a intentional, planned time to respond quickly. And so there's like a balance where thinking how you can make your communication
Yes.
work while not getting frustrated and burnt out
Because
by
it
it.
is your job to respond to students at the end of the
Yep.
day, but setting those boundaries up front, and then I honestly think there's some accountability piece, right, where it's like, if you're right, I didn't respond. I totally lost your email. I'm so sorry. Let's go around again. That's okay. We don't have to complain about our students if we are missing out on something, but I definitely think boundary setting, right? It's a personal and professional thing alike. Doesn't mean you're neglecting your duties. And like you just mentioned, there are timing pieces. We know when there are times when we're going to need to be more on. Today's one of those days for me where, as we're recording this, my students are kind of taking a difficult assessment right now. They're filling out a tax worksheet. They're emailing me needing help. And then I just ran into something, by the way, like just now, where 5 minutes, somebody emailed me. I emailed her right back. I was like, "Can we meet right now?" And 30 minutes later, she was like, "Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry." So I thought, "Oh, you're on your email too."
Yeah,
Right?
email doesn't work that way sometimes, right?
Yeah,
We, like, you have to be, like, paying attention to it coming
yeah,
in.
which I am, but she
Yeah, she was
almost the
not.
opposite effect, right? I also think there's a balance between, modeling professional behavior for our students and expecting them to act like professionals, especially as freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can show them how to be professional, but they're not always gonna get it because it's new
It
to them. Are you kidding? I've been a professional for over 20 years,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
And we are all still learning. That's, I think, a big piece of this is that everybody is still, you know, working through. the expectations and working through what we know to be things, and you can change your mind. I think that's another piece of this, is that you can change your mind about how you want to communicate, and that's okay. Like, if you decide that you need a boundary, or, you know what, actually, like, I find myself responding after hours anyway. I really didn't need to put that. You have the right.
That
You have the
actually
right to change.
I did do that one time because I used to say that I won't respond outside of that 8 to 5 time frame. I'm rarely do I respond to emails until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, almost every day
Yeah.
for anybody, and I
I
was
feel
like,
like when
"Why
you
did
have
I put that
kids,
in
like,
there?"
you
Because
yeah.
that's not what I'm doing, and I don't it is just part of what it is, right? So,
Right.
yeah, that's such a good point. So, I think communication is one place that we can see a lot of burnout. There's 2 other things that I think we, especially teacher heavy, faculty think about is like we are teaching the same class over and over and over again.
Yes.
Some people, the same class, multiple sections every semester. And because of that, it's easy to forget that our students are new and haven't seen it. And then we feel frustrated and pressure to make it different, or we're just getting bored. And that
Yes,
boredom
yes.
can lead to burnout, right? Because it's not engaging us, it's not exciting us. And I'm
Absolutely.
curious, have you felt that, Katie? And if you have,
Yes,
what have
yes.
you
Well,
done to, like, shake yourself out,
it's a
if
tough question,
anything?
Becky. Kind
I know,
of.
sorry.
So I think for me, it's like I teach somewhere between 5 and 7 preps a year across multiple layers of the school. Like, in my busiest, I would say, years, I've got like 5 or 6 preps, all the way from an intro class in the summer up to a law class, um, second and third year law students in the spring, and MBA students, and everywhere in between. So I don't know that I am the right person to ask that particular a question in this cycle. And then when my department chair every single year goes, "Are you overwhelmed?" I'm like, "No, I actually love it because I don't get bored. It's very fun for me. I am definitely not teaching the same thing over and over." To add to that, the topics that I teach change
Change.
constantly. So at minimum, I was just talking to a student about this last night. At minimum, I'm updating every year, but probably in a couple particular classes I can think of, I'm updating every semester. It's a lot of work, but it keeps me on my toes, and I like that. My need to switch gears or to take a step back comes in to when you've been teaching a class, regardless of how many times you teach it, but for a long period of time, and reminding yourself that this is the first time these students have seen this topic, right? So even though I could teach this, blindfolded with earplugs in, that does not mean that my students are able to grasp right away. And so kind of taking a step back, going, this is the first time they've ever heard this term ever in their lives. In many cases, the topics I teach, they have never even heard of the subject before. And so that's my moderation, I think. I don't want to be
Yeah,
bored. And
yeah, consistently remind you're trying to have different classes and teaching in things that change,
and
and
if
for
you
those
do No, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, if you do feel like you're getting to that point, speak up and ask your department chair if there's an additional prep you could take on. Are there overload opportunities? As a new faculty member coming in, you have an opportunity to, graduate from the class you're teaching. That's kinda how I got started in the multiple preps, because I raised my hand and said, "Yeah, that sounds fun. Why not?"
Well, and I think that's a good idea and a good example of if you're starting to feel that, if you're starting to feel like it's a slog to teach this class, even if it's we teach it every fall, so it's not constant, but it is once a year. There's a couple things you said, Katie, that I think are great ideas. One, raise your hand to take on that new course or that pitch a special topics course. The worst that happens is
Yeah.
somebody tells you no. Ask to co-teach, ask a colleague if they'd be willing to switch for 1 semester, and when you do that, say, "You like, we'll switch all the prep is done, just can you teach it versus me teach it?" Or guest lecture. I'm guest lecturing in a class at KU coming up, and I'm very excited about it because it's something I used to talk about, I don't get to talk about anymore, and it's not for my class, but it's making me feel excited again,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
that's part of it managing that burnout is, like, even if it's little things to make yourself feel that rush, to remind yourself that you still love doing this, even if I still have to go back and teach intro every semester in perpetuity, that's fine.
Right, right. But you're getting out, and it sounds like here we're saying do more to avoid burnout, and that's not the message. I think the message is do different
Do
to avoid
different. Love it.
burnout, do different. You might have an interest or expertise in a topic that you're not maximizing right now. So my sustainability reporting class is a really good example of this. I do not have expertise background in that subject, but I was teaching an international accounting class, which I do have expertise and background in. And we ended up just talking a lot about that topic. ESG, sustainability reporting was coming up a lot. And it turned into this like, why don't I just do this for 3 credit hours? It would be a really fun elective. And I ended up writing the class, proposing the class, and now I'm in my third full year teaching the class. It has like 200 students a year. It's really popular. Now, I didn't know anything about that topic when I started it, but it was fun. It was attractive to students. I was willing to learn. I had the international background, and then my department chair was very willing to hear me out about why it belonged in the curriculum. You just don't know until you say, "Hey, that they're interested in this anyway." And if it's promoting student success, you can't lose, right?
When I like that concept of do different because that means you could ask to exchange guest lectures. So it's the same, it's just you're doing one for their class and they're doing one for yours. And by the way, you can do that across universities
Yes,
too
yes,
using Zoom. It doesn't have to be within your own group. I think that's a really good opportunity. It's not going to require you to do less work. And I often think that managing burnout doesn't mean doing less. It means coming up with ways to essentially shake you out of your funk and to remind yourself and reinvigorate yourself and remotivate yourself
yes,
because those are the things that slowly like eke away as you start to feel overwhelmed or bored or frustrated with the work that
100%.
you're doing.
Well, and to re-solidify yourself as an expert, right? I think there's definitely some merit to saying, "Look, I got into this to begin with because I'm an expert in this subject, and so I can tell people about that expertise." I would say, especially if you have an interest or an expertise in something like really niche that people are sort of afraid of, don't want to do, you're valuable. Go on in. Tell them about the cool stuff you're doing. So I'm a Reddit lurker. I wouldn't say I'm a Reddit user. I'm a Reddit lurker, and occasionally an Ask Academia on the sub, which is actually it's pretty healthy sub all in. Got to caveat that. Some people will be like, there's this professor who's doing this research and I'm really like excited about it, but I don't know if I'm going to be bothering them. And every single person on there is always like, ask them to talk, like go talk to them. People like people want nothing more than to talk about what they're doing. Like they're so excited about it. So like, yes, if you go out and find those opportunities, right? Because people are interested in hearing about it.
Well, and similarly, on that note, think about how your expertise can be used in the classroom in an out of the box way.
Yes,
Like if you
yes.
have a specific cadence you tend to use and you're starting to feel demotivated, like you don't want to show up, do something random.
Flip the
One
script.
class period that's totally built. I teach a lot right now about how creativity is a skill that can be developed, right?
Right.
There are tons of creativity building exercises that you can find easily online
Yep.
that you can use to break up one class session that is beneficial for your class because they're going to apply that creative ability to your class. I know
Yes.
you might think accounting is not a creative discipline,
No,
but
it
actually
totally
it
is.
is.
Sometimes you go
You
to jail for it being creative, but
too creative,
no, but
right?
don't get too creative. But no, it totally is, yeah.
Yeah, like creative thinking is valuable. So sometimes maybe you just take a day off of the content, do something
Mhm.
out of the box that also sees excitement in your students. And then that's part of that reinvigoration for you as well. Because so much of what we do in academia as faculty is self motivated. And
Yes.
having to consistently intrinsically motivate yourself, I'm sorry that I don't mean for this to sound like it's complaining, but it's not easy.
No, it is not. And flipping the script is fresh. It helps students learn better. It keeps you motivated. I mean, I keep a document on my computer called it's literally just like called ongoing course notes. I think I've referenced it in this podcast before where I just like write stuff down. I FaceTimed with one of my law students yesterday. We were going over the midterm. People didn't feel great about what happened in the midterm. And he was giving me a couple suggestions. And I was like, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just taking notes. This is fantastic. And then implement it. Like, you don't have to stay stagnant. And if you're feeling burnout, sometimes that's, I think, boredom. I think burnout and boredom are very closely aligned in many ways that we don't sort of realize.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, and we're getting a little close on our time because I think this is such a personal topic that it's easy for us to talk about, and there are lots of other things that may lead to burnout in your role. So, one other potential strategy, I know I said managing burnout doesn't mean doing less, but sometimes it does.
Yes.
Sometimes it does mean saying no to the extra things. So instead of cutting out what you're doing now, it's okay to sometimes say, "I don't have space for that at
Yes.
this point," even if it's a thing you really want to do. That's where I struggle a lot
Yeah,
is
me too.
saying it when it's something I really do want to do, but giving yourself permission to know that this is not the only time that opportunity is likely to come your way so that you can build it in a way that's sustainable for your career.
Yes. Becky, no is a complete sentence.
Yes. Yeah, I'm bad at it, but it is a complete sentence.
I
Maybe a
am
whole
too.
episode, we need to bring a 3rd guest on, somebody that's really good at saying no.
Yes, absolutely.
So, before we wrap up real quick, some ways that you might recognize that you're tending toward burnout. We already mentioned maybe not wanting to get up and go to work or not feeling excited or even you don't have to feel excited every time you go in the classroom, but feeling uninterested in having class, feeling a pull to cancel class when you don't really have a reason to cancel class, potentially anything that is out of the ordinary for you. A few weeks back at the beginning of the semester, I wrote one of my newsletters about how on the second day of classes this semester, I was like countdowning. And I love teaching. I love teaching more than anything. And I was counting down to when I didn't have to go to class anymore. So if you're doing things like that that are out of character for you, that's a good time to step back and say, "Whoa, I'm pushing probably toward burnout. What can I do?" And then lack of sleep is the other one that I tend to notice. Like if I'm not sleeping well or I'm waking up and I'm feeling exhausted even though I got 10 hours of sleep, that can be a sign that you're tending toward burnout. Do you have any others that you tend to notice,
Oh,
Katie?
I think that's a really good list.
Cool. Well, I think this is a super interesting topic. And if you are listening to this and there are additional things that you either notice when you notice burnout, and there are ways that give you kind of a clue that you might need to mix it up or step back, or if you have some other great ideas of how to manage burnout as a faculty member, please comment them in the comment box or send us a message, Becky at theengagedprofessor.com. I'd love to hear more and share some of that feedback on one of our upcoming pods. Until then, like, subscribe, give us a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more people find the podcast. And until next time, keep up the good work you do.